Welcome, and get ready for a really fascinating deep dive today. We're looking into something that, well, it almost sounds like science fiction, or maybe a spy movie,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
using something called a memory palace to learn, get this, the entire world map, all the countries and their capitals.
It's a powerful idea.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And if you've ever felt, just overwhelmed by information, or maybe wish there was a smarter way to actually remember things, then this is definitely for you.
Hmm.
Think of it like building this incredible mental filing system, one that's, always with you, no internet required.
Exactly. And a memory palace, at its heart, it's really just an imagined place. It could be your childhood home, maybe a park you like, or even just a route you walk often.
Okay.
And in that space, you mentally place these vivid images, often really bizarre ones, that represent what you want to remember.
Like the example you mentioned before, putting a giant rubber chicken wearing sunglasses on your doorstep.
Yeah, to remind you about taking out the trash or whatever it is. It sounds silly, but that's kind of the point. Our brains are just exceptionally good at remembering places. That's a skill we've honed over millennia.
Survival mechanism.
Precisely. And memory palaces just tap into that built-in spatial memory to organize and, crucially, retrieve information.
Yeah, and for someone like you, our listener, who really wants to grab knowledge fast, understand a clever system,
Uh-huh.
and get those fantastic aha moments where it all just clicks into place, this seems particularly powerful.
Definitely.
So today we're digging into excerpts from How to Make a Memory Palace of a World Map, Its Countries and Capitals. But it's not just a how-to.
No, not just that.
We're also going to explore this really intriguing question the author raises. Why aren't these techniques, which seem so effective, a standard part of education?
That really is the central question, isn't it? If these mnemonic methods work so well, why aren't they fundamental? Why aren't we teaching them from a young age?
You'd think we would be.
Yeah. We're talking about tools that could give kids, well, everyone, really, a mental scaffold for all sorts of information history, science facts, vocab.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit.
Yeah.
The author points out that, sure, things like immersion, repetition, they definitely have their place.
Of course, they're important.
But mnemonics seem brilliant for locking in those frameworks, those key facts, names, dates, geographical stuff,
Yeah.
all that data.
Exactly. Key words.
Just think about it. Wouldn't it be great to just know the capital of, say, Norway without having to Google it again?
Right. Effortlessly.
It really makes you wonder why we don't lean into these built-in abilities more, directly in how we learn.
And it wasn't always this way. There was a time, and maybe not even that long ago, when being able to memorize loads of information was seen as, well, virtuous.
Right, the author mentions the 1960s when rote learning still had a kind of respected place.
But the decline. Well, here's where it gets really interesting, maybe even a bit strange. There seems to be this surprising historical reason why these methods kind of fell out of favor in mainstream education.
Go on.
The author suggests the Catholic Church, way back in the Middle Ages, actually prohibited mnemonics.
Prohibited them. Why?
Because they often relied on these, well, strange and humorous mental pictures, exaggerations, things the church apparently found problematic, maybe even improper.
Wow. So the quirky images were the problem.
It seems so. And it gets pretty serious. There's the shocking example of Giordano Bruno.
Oh yeah, I read that part.
He was executed in 1600. And part of the reason, alongside his other less conventional beliefs, was apparently for teaching mnemonics.
Executed for teaching memory tricks. That's
It's-
intense.
It really highlights how suspicious, maybe even threatening, these techniques seemed to the powers that be back then.
So that historical pushback might have just lingered,
Yeah.
leading to less emphasis on memory training over the centuries.
It's a plausible connection the author draws. This kind of systematic teaching of mnemonics never really made a widespread comeback after the Middle Ages, did it? Not really, except maybe in those niche areas, like memory competitions you hear about sometime.
Exactly. And the author makes this really bold claim to show their power. Says anyone, absolutely anyone,
Yeah.
can learn to memorize a list of 10 random objects, forwards and backwards, in about 10 minutes using these methods.
10 minutes, seriously.
10 minutes. It gives you a very concrete sense of the immediate potential we're talking about here.
Okay, so how? What are the basic techniques then?
Well, often it starts simple with something called the link method, especially for, say, an unordered list, like a shopping list.
Right, chicken, toothpaste, newspaper.
Yeah, you just create these bizarre, memorable mental links between each pair. So maybe you picture a chicken trying really hard to brush its teeth with a giant tube of toothpaste.
Okay, got it. Weird image.
And then maybe that toothpaste explodes in this minty cloud that somehow solidifies into a perfectly folded newspaper.
It taps into our brain's love for novelty, for the unusual. That makes it stick way better than just repeating chicken, toothpaste, newspaper over and over.
Right. The absurdity makes it memorable.
Okay.
Okay, so that's for an unordered list. What about when the order matters?
Similar idea, but with an extra step. First, you need visual hooks for the numbers themselves.
Number shapes.
Exactly. Like a tie looks a bit like a number 1, right? A swan's neck looks like a 2, maybe handcuffs for 8. You create your own set.
I see. So you have a picture for each number.
Then you link those number shapes to your ordered list items, again using ridiculous scenes.
So for the shopping list, number 1 is chicken.
Yeah, so you imagine maybe that number 1 tie is, I don't know, strangling the poor chicken.
Okay. A bit dark.
Or maybe number 2, the swan, is swimming gracefully in a giant bathtub full of toothpaste.
Gotcha. So you link the number image to the item image. It gives you that sequence.
Precisely. It anchors the item to its position in the list visually.
So these linking methods, the number shapes, they're like tools in a kind of mental toolbox.
That's a great way to put it. And that toolbox idea leads us right into the memory palace concept itself.
Right, the palace.
Think of it as taking that basic idea of using your home, but expanding it hugely. You mentally walk through this imagined palace.
Or any familiar space.
Any familiar space, exactly. And you place your memorable images, like a chicken strangling tie, the toothpaste swan in specific spots. A specific location within the palace is called a locus.
Locus, okay?
Okay.
Like the Thai chicken goes on the grand piano in the living room locus.
Perfect. And the swan toothpaste is maybe in the kitchen sink locus, and so on.
Okay, but here's a practical issue. Most of our actual homes, they don't have 200 rooms, right? If we're trying to learn 200 countries.
True. And that's where the concept of virtual memory palaces comes in. It's a key idea.
Virtual meaning.
Meaning it doesn't have to be a real building, perfectly. You're creating a symbolic structure in your mind, like a mental blueprint.
So it could be an imagined long corridor with lots of unique doors.
Yeah.
Or maybe a path through a huge imaginary garden.
Exactly, a sequence of distinct locations. And the author's idea here is to dedicate one distinct mental space, one room or locus, to each of the world's, say, 200 or so countries.
Whoa. So one country gets an imagined spooky graveyard as its locus.
Yeah, maybe with swirling mist and old tombstones.
And the next country gets a really bright, noisy restaurant kitchen.
With chefs shouting and pans clanging. And another gets maybe a quiet library or a bustling train station. Each location needs to be distinct and memorable in itself.
And it can get even more detailed.
Yeah.
The author mentions using real towns, streets.
Oh, yeah. You can layer these things. Imagine using the streets of your own town or a city you know well, like London or Paris, as the basis for a huge interconnected memory palace system.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
good. You're basically building a whole mental world. And it's always there, no Wi-Fi needed.
That's the beauty of it. It's entirely internal.
Okay, so let's drill down into building this world map palace specifically. Why 200 countries, just a round number?
Well, partly practicality. The author mentions it fits nicely with our decimal system, makes organizing easier. But the really crucial part is memorizing the countries in a specific sequence.
Continent by continent.
Yes, exactly. Following a logical path. This sequence is key, especially if you later want to recall other ordered information, like maybe the points in a speech.
Right, because you can just mentally walk along your country sequence.
Precisely. So for Africa, for example, you might start with Morocco, then move logically to Algeria, then Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, following the coastline, perhaps.
Okay, makes sense. And this is where the number shape system comes back in.
You got it. You link each country in your chosen sequence to its number. Morocco is number 1, so you bring back that image of the tie.
Algeria is number 2, so you use the swan image.
Tunisia's 3, maybe handcuffs. Oh, wait, no, handcuffs were 8. Maybe a trident for 3, whatever works for you. You link the number image to the country.
Okay, so I have my sequence. Thai Morocco, swan Algeria, trident Tunisia. How do I then stick the capital in there?
Okay, this involves some creative layering. First, you take the country's name, or maybe its abbreviation, like MORR for Morocco.
Okay.
And you use that to inspire a kind of topic or theme for that country's locus. So ORR might suggest maybe morbidity.
Morbidity.
dark.
Okay.
Then you choose a locus, a location that fits that theme. For morbidity, a graveyard seems pretty fitting, right?
Yeah, the spooky graveyard we mentioned earlier.
Exactly. Now, you need to link Morocco's position in the sequence. Number one, the pie to this locus. So you create an image connecting the tie to something in the graveyard that represents Morocco's theme.
So maybe the skull in the graveyard, and it's wearing a neatly knotted tie.
Perfect. That links number one, tie, to the morbidity graveyard theme for Morocco. Now, the final step, the capital, Rabat.
Rabat. Okay, how do I link Rabat to the graveyard?
You need another memorable, probably absurd image within that graveyard locus. The author's example is pretty funny. Imagine a rabbit.
Rabbit for Rabat.
Yeah, a rabbit jumping out of one of the graves, maybe wearing boxing gloves and shouting, "Rabbit, rabbit!"
Okay, that's definitely memorable. Rabbit jumping from a grave where a skull is wearing a tie.
See, it's layered. Sequence. Country theme. Morbidity. Locus. Graveyard. Specific image linking number to locus. Skull with tie. Capital link. Rabbiting grave.
Wow. That's quite a chain, but I can see how the weirdness makes it work.
And you can apparently add even more information. The author suggests creating maybe 10 specific stations or pegs within each country's locus.
Within the graveyard, for instance.
Yeah, maybe peg 1 is by the gate, peg 2 is a specific tombstone, peg 3 is a spooky tree. And at each peg, you place an image representing another piece of data, like GDP, population area.
So you could have a little story playing out in the graveyard linking all these facts about Morocco together.
Exactly. And you could even use, say, different real graveyards, in various cities as loci for completely separate memory palaces, maybe for different lists or subjects. You build this whole interconnected web.
That's incredible. So pulling this all together then, memory palaces are this, well, surprisingly ancient technique, right?
Very old, yes, with a rather dramatic history.
And they're a powerful tool for learning things efficiently, especially complex stuff like the world map. It's all about making these really vivid, often funny links.
Linking what you need to remember to places using these clever mnemonic tricks.
And for you, the listener, this offers a really structured way, and maybe even a fun way, to get a grip on geography, or really anything else.
It really does. It makes you think, doesn't it? If these techniques are so effective, what else could we be learning more easily? What potential are we maybe leaving untapped?
Exactly. Imagine if this was just normal, part of how everyone learned. What other complex subjects could suddenly feel manageable? What personal learning goals could you, listening now, tackle if you started building your own mental architecture like this?
It's definitely food for thought.
Yeah. Maybe give it a try. Start small. Perhaps use the author's Africa examples we touched on for a bit of inspiration.
Why not? See if it clicks for you.
Well, we hope this deep dive has given you a good foundation, a starting point, to maybe explore this whole fascinating world of memory techniques a bit further.